we're starting on page 99. Just one word of introduction. This book is called a prayer book. That's not exactly right. I would say good 80% of the contents of this book is not prayer. Prayer, what's called tefillah in Hebrew, is strictly the silent prayer, the amidah, the Shemoneh Esrei, what you say with your feet standing together, facing the next most holy place. This book has lots of other things in it. The Shema is not prayer. The recital of Psalms is not prayer. The beginning blessings is not prayer. The quotation of the Mishnah is not prayer. We are looking at what, strictly speaking, is called prayer. Now, this text has about 450 words. There are variations. The Sephardi world and the Ashkenazi world, within the Ashkenazi world, the Sephardi world, variations are very minor. Everyone has 19 blessings. They're all in the same order. The subjects are exactly the same. There are very minor variations in vocabulary and no variation in theme. The structure goes back 2,500 years, and there have been minor variations over the centuries, but the basic structure has served the Jewish people for 2,500 years. Takes the average person who knows the Hebrew and who's done it before maybe 5 or 6 minutes to recite it. The Mishnah says there was a group of very pious people who used to take an hour to recite it. If you divide an hour by 450, you get about 7 seconds per word. And a lot of the words repeat. That means it was a kind of exercise in guided meditation. There has to be a great deal of depth in these words, especially since many of the words are quoted from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible, and there, either dictated by God or inspired by God, you have limitless depth. So what we are going to do is scratch the surface, and we're going to do it in a way that's representative of my idiosyncratic interests. There are literally hundreds of books on prayer, and they all reflect the interests of the authors. So the fact that I present to you matters that are based on logic, precise analysis of language, and philosophy, says nothing about the nature of the prayer. It just says something about my particular interests, and other people who are interested in psychology or in ethical instruction or in history or sociology would give you other comments. Now, the introduction to prayer, which I have at the top of 99, is a quotation from the book of Psalms. My Lord, open my lips, that my mouth shall declare your praise. That's not, strictly speaking, part of the prayer. The prayer begins with Baruch. If you omit that for whatever reason and you say the rest, you have satisfied your obligation. But every prayer begins with that sentence. Now, if you just briefly take a look at page 119, this is a meditation which is said after one finishes the prayer. This is true for every prayer that one ever prays. It starts, my God, guard my tongue from evil and my lips from speaking deceitfully. So the parentheses around prayer are petitions to God about speech. The general thought here is that all powers come from God, and the power of speech is crucially related to the essence of the human being. Maharal, again, for me as a philosopher, this was really fascinating to see. Maharal says that the Greek definition of humanity is rejected by the Torah. The Greek definition of humanity is a rational animal, stressing the ability of the intellect to reason and to know. The Jewish definition of the human being is the speaking soul. When in Genesis it says that God breathed into Adam a soul or breath of life, and he became Nefesh Chaya. Nefesh Chaya means roughly living soul. The official Aramaic translation of the Torah, authored by a Roman convert to Judaism, writes Ruach Mamalel, a speaking spirit. And the Maharal says that's because our definition of the essence of humanity is not thinking but speaking. What's the difference between thinking and speaking? You cannot speak unless you think. I know that there are a lot of contemporary examples which make that sound like it's not quite true, but on some level or other, some thinking has to be going on. But thinking is wholly mental, and in our terms could be called wholly spiritual. Something that's wholly spiritual isn't human. This is not an obvious point. To think about other religions, this would be a point of great contention. The essence of humanity is to bridge the spiritual and the physical. It's to bring the spiritual into the physical. It's to elevate the physical to become an ally of the spiritual. Speech bridges the gap. It's thought expressed physically. By the way, in many respects, writing is equivalent. So, for example, before you study Torah in the morning, you're supposed to say a blessing, sanctifying that activity. There are those who say that if you're only going to think Torah, you don't have to say the blessing. Only if you speak it or write it must you say the blessing, because then you are giving it full human expression. So, the Shemoneh Esrei, which is an exercise of speech, this is another reason, by the way, it's spoken and not meditated. Every text that we have a responsibility to use, we have the responsibility to speak. There are no texts upon which you just meditate. Because the essence of the human being is to speak, and here we are pleading with God to give us that power. And at the end of the Shemoneh Esrei, we are pleading with God to enable us to use that power in a pure fashion, because if we don't, then we defile it, and we become incapable of using it for holy purposes. Now that's the beginning that we're together so far? Okay, let's start. The first word, Baruch. This is a very common word. It's in every blessing, many blessings twice, some blessings once, and it's a word that occurs in the Tanakh many times, and it is a very difficult word to explain. Again, I'm taking one aspect. There are other aspects that I'm not going to deal with. If you would ask someone who wasn't aware of its meaning and wasn't aware of its occurrence in the Tanakh, and asked him what the word means on the basis of the dictionary and what he knows of grammar, this is what he would say. Well, the root means to bless. Baruch is a passive form of the verb. So, for example, lishbor means to break, and shavur means broken. Shalom means to pay a debt, and shalom means paid. So Baruch means what we say in English, blessed. Of course, probably you have an idea what blessed means in English? Probably not. Nobody talks that way anymore. Yeah, what does it mean, blessed?
Inherent blessing.
Sorry?
Source of blessing.
No. Blessed does not mean that. Blessed is the passive of the verb to bless. It means having received a blessing. See, you know too much philosophy and too much theology, and your mind rebels at the simple grammar of the word. Baruch means one who has received a blessing. Just as blessed in English means someone who has received a blessing. And the immediate difficulty is, how are you going to say about God that he received a blessing? And from whom would he be receiving a blessing? Let's make it worse. What exactly is a blessing? Well, in Hebrew and in English, a blessing is something that's really good. In English, we have the phrase of blessing in disguise. What do we mean when we call something a blessing in disguise? Boy, when it happened, I thought it was terrible. But later, on reflection, I realized that it really was good for me. That's a blessing. A blessing is something that's really good. So now, Baruch, according to the simple grammar, is going to mean received something that's really good. The idea of God receiving something that's really good for God is very difficult. Good. Put it on the side. I've noticed that. I've expressed it. We'll come back to it, and I will solve it for you. Let's go to another meaning. Now, this is the meaning that he suggested. Maybe Baruch shouldn't be taken passively. It should be taken actively, with a little twist. After all, you have two words in Hebrew that are used very, very often, Rachum and Chanun. Rachum means merciful. Chanun means gracious. Merciful means giving out mercy. Gracious means giving out grace. Those are not passive, they're active. Then Baruch would mean the source of blessing. Oh, that sounds good. That's perfect. Say God is the source of blessing. That's cake. We have sources on both sides. Indeed, in particular, the Nefesh HaChaim says that Baruch can mean, not exclusively, but can mean recipient of blessing. Now, how is that going to work? And then, when we see how it's going to work, how will it be related to being the source of blessing? As we'll see, it's two sides of one coin and two sides of a mutual relationship with people. Mutual relationship with people. I'll do this once on a simple level, and then if you push me, I'll push it a little deeper. God presents himself to us. By the way, my training in secular terms is in mathematical logic. So I choose my words carefully. I'm responsible for my words. If there's something wrong with my words, then it's my failure. I'll give you this another footnote. I'll give you a little piece of advice. When you want to ask a question, especially if you want to raise an objection to what someone's saying, if you have to use words that he didn't use, you're in trouble. If you can't phrase your question or your objection in the vocabulary that he used, then something's gone wrong. If you really have a genuine objection to him, you got to be able to phrase it in his vocabulary. Now, I say that God presents himself to us as creating the world for a purpose. And he has assigned us to work to make that purpose a reality, to fulfill that purpose. Well, that's what God wants. Now, with imperfect beings, there's a gap between what you want and what's really good for you. We all know that to our sorrow. And we all observe that in other people to their sorrow. But with God, there's no such gap. If that's what he wants, then that's what's really good. So if God presents himself as creating the world for a purpose, and we act to make that purpose occur or push it forward, then we are doing for God what is really good for God. In that way, we can present God with a blessing. We can bless God directly by causing him to receive a blessing, by giving to him what he wants, which is in fact good for him. Now for the twist. What is it that he wants? What is it that he wants? He wants to bless us. That's what he wants. He wants to give us what's good for us. So here's a double interaction. He wants to give us what's good for us, but he wants it to come through an act of our self-preparation. So, when I prepare myself, I'm doing for him what he wants. He wants me to have a hand in the process. He wants me to have the hand in the process, particularly with preparing myself to receive what he wants to give. When I prepare myself, I'm giving a blessing to him. And that then results, notice I didn't say enables, that then results in his giving a blessing to us. What you get is a relationship of mutual blessing. Let's run through that again. He wants something. He creates the world for a purpose. What is his purpose? His purpose is to give us blessing. That's his purpose. But he wants it to come about in a certain way. In particular, he wants it to come about through our cooperation, our participation, in particular our participation, preparing ourselves to receive what he wants to give. So the first step has to come from us. He isn't going to give, at least in this interaction, he isn't going to give unless we prepare ourselves. So the first step is that we prepare ourselves. When we prepare ourselves, we're giving him what he wants. He wants us to prepare ourselves so that then he can take the second step of giving us that which is good for us. We prepare ourselves thereby presenting him with a blessing, and he then follows up by giving us the blessing for which we have prepared ourselves. The word Baruch now describes a relationship of mutual blessing between us and Him. That is, I think, in a way, the most fundamental description of the relationship. It's a single word that carries that double concept. That's one of the reasons why it is so common. We say it over and over and over again. That's why I call the title of this shir, Jewish Worldview, as found in the words of the prayer, because when you press a word like that, these are the ideas that start bubbling to the surface. Okay, second word is atah, you.
Sorry, Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, from my understanding, we say the Shemoneh Esrei because we're asking for these things. So, it's not so much that we're asking for them; it's that by saying the prayers, we're we're making the conditions to receive a blessing.
Very good, very good. Maybe I should have put this in as a matter of introduction, but since you asked, let me put this point in now. The Shemoneh Esrei, the silent prayer, breaks up into three parts. It starts with praise, it then followed by petition, what you're talking about, asking God for things, and it ends with a statement of gratitude, thanks, though there are other things at the end, but that's the basic structure. Praise, petition, and thanksgiving. The reason for prayer is the petition. That's why we're there. That's the essence of the performance, to ask. You just prelude it with three blessings of petition of praise. That's what we're doing now. This is not to take the place of the petition at all. The petitions are straight out petitions,
Right.
Explicit petitions. They're coming from blessing 4 and on.
Right.
So this here is praise. But this praise is relevant to what's coming later. It's building a picture of what's coming later. And yes, this is a background to it. But it's not in place of the petition. Okay? What difficulties there are with the idea of petition, we'll talk about when we get to the petition section. Okay, let me insert another footnote. Having said that, let's just think a little bit about praise. This is a pure philosophical point now. What a great painting. What a great novel. What a great football play. What a great mathematical proof, so on and so on. When I say it's great, is that expression of my attitude? Is that subjective when I say things are great? Or is it objective? Is praise based on objective standards? Or is praise just a matter of how it strikes me? And it's different from every person, and there's no question of getting it right and getting it wrong. There's a whole industry of saying that it's subjective, and there are philosophers who I think ought to know better, who say that it's subjective, but it's not true. Praise is objective, not subjective. Praise is objective, not relative. There are rights and wrongs about praise. Appropriate and inappropriate praise. Relevant, valid praise, and irrelevant, invalid praise. Let me give you a simple example. The point that I'm saying now is from John Stuart Mill, really. I have my own illustrations of this one, but it's his point, and I'll express his part of it in a minute. You meet someone who has never seen of nor heard of basketball. What? No clue what basketball is? Let me tell you, it's something. It's really something. You're not lucky enough to be from America, so you don't know about that. But you come from America. Let me take you to a basketball game, and I'll show you some things that are really fascinating. Fine. He accompanies you. You go into the stadium, and you're there while the teams are warming up. And just looking around. Suddenly, he grabs your arm, and he says, "Wow! Did you see that? Look, he jumped into the air. While he was in the air, he threw the ball into the hoop from the foul line. What a great shot!" And you say, "Come on, you don't happen to know this, but every high school kid can do that. That's nothing. Maybe in the course of the game there'll be 2 or 3 great shots. That's not a great shot. It's too common to be a great shot. That means when he says it's a great shot, he's wrong. One objective feature of great things is that they're not common. Anything that's common and everyday isn't great. If I can convict him of a mistake, then it's not just an expression of his feeling. He was amazed. He felt full of awe. So what? The shot was not a great shot. Now, John Stuart Mill says,
isn't the great shot relative to the person that does the shot there?
Then that'll be a great shot for him.
Right.
But that's not the same as a great shot.
Because, but see, if it was a professional doing it, then it's not a great shot.
Correct.
What if it was a 2-year-old?
So I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There are two things to say. One is that it's a great shot, and the other is that it's a great shot for him. Those are two different descriptions.
Right. As if you were to say it was a great shot.
For him,
Then
that might be right.
Right.
That might be right. You know, if you're an instructor and you're teaching 7-year-olds about basketball, you'll talk about the kid made a great shot for a 7-year-old. It's not a great shot. And this changes over time. You know, people learn techniques. When Tchaikovsky composed the violin concerto, right? Violinist said he must hate the violin because it's impossible to play. Over the 150 years since he wrote it, violinists have discovered techniques today. Any reasonably good violinist can play it, not because it got easier, but because the techniques were invented to make it possible. So what is great may be relative to a time and a setting. At any rate, John Stuart Mill said the following: let's suppose you have two items in the same aesthetic category, two novels, two plays, two paintings, two pieces of music, two pieces of classical music, two pieces of jazz. I don't want to be doctrinaire about different forms, though I could be. Let's suppose everyone who's capable of understanding both prefers one. Let's suppose. That doesn't have to be. There may be cases in which that's not true, but suppose it is true. Take Shakespeare and
Arthur Miller.
Huh?
Arthur Miller.
Maybe Arthur Miller. I'm trying to think. Charles Dickens. They're both British. They're both right. Well, they're separate by 400 years, but okay. Now, I think it's fair to say that anyone who's capable of understanding both prefers Shakespeare. I don't think you'll find a single counterexample to that. Which means if you meet someone who says he likes Dickens better, you can bet it's because he can't understand Shakespeare. And you can quiz him. How many times does character speak? When did he speak the longest? Do you remember the structure of the play? Now, did he speak poetically or did he speak in prose? Would he speak sarcastically or, right? In Shakespeare, the person will be lost. He doesn't know if it's sarcastic or not. Because he can't read it, he can't understand it. And therefore Dickens, who wrote for the common man, most of Dickens' novels appeared in periodicals. Every month a new chapter came out, then they were collected into books. I mean, it was written for the common man. They're charming, they're informative and entertaining. Shakespeare. So now, said Mill, if everyone who can understand both prefers one, that one is objectively better than the other. I'll give you a little test of how this would apply. Imagine that this example comes from 30 years ago, so it's a little out of date. I was imagining a young man, let's say 14 or 16, living in Dubai, and looking at films of skiing in the Alps. Now, this is out of date because in Dubai they now have Alps, and they have snow, and they have skiing, and so forth and so on. But they didn't have it 30 years ago, as rich as they were. He's watching these people, obviously very cold. There are sharp rocks around, it's windy, and they're on these slippery boards, and they're going downhill, and some of them going down quite fast. Looks quite dangerous. Why are they doing that? I'll bet this is a prison camp. This is a prison camp where they torture people for political misbehavior and so forth and so on. But then he looks at their faces, and they're smiling. They look like they're having a good time. Couldn't he say, they have two arms, and I have two arms. They have two legs, I have two legs. They have a head, I have a head. We're both human. If they're enjoying it, then probably, if I learned how to do it, I would enjoy it also. Even though I can't imagine it, but since they're human, okay. Now, let's take that and transpose it into Mill's situation. Here I am reading my Dickens over my evening sherry, with my feet up before the fire and so forth and so on. Somebody says, why don't you read Shakespeare? I say, I don't know, it's unintelligible. I can't understand a word. I like simple stuff, easy stuff. He says to me, if you would learn Shakespeare, you would have a world of inspiration and pleasure available to you that you don't have now. I say, who told you that? I like my Dickens. I said, well, listen, Everybody who's made the investment says so. Everybody who's made the investment says that they enjoy Shakespeare more than Dickens. Why do you think you're different from them? If that happened to everybody else, then it's overwhelmingly probable that if you would invest in understanding Shakespeare, you too would enjoy it more than Dickens. That's the sense in which there's an objective superiority here. This is a very important thing to learn, and this is in terms of praise. What is great literature? I'm a musician. I performed hundreds of times. I listen to music, classical music, to this day. Chaim Salinger knows classical music much better than I do. And one composer with whom I had no relationship at all was Mozart. I could not take it. I just couldn't take it. And he kept badgering me for years to give Mozart a fair chance. I decided he's very intelligent. He knows music better than I do. And I worked on it for a while. I love Mozart now. It was obviously a blind spot that I had, and I had to overcome it. But I trusted that if Mozart is considered one of the greatest composers of all time, there has to be something there that I'm missing, not the other way around. Not that it's, either there's nothing there to be talked about, or, it's just conceit. So, praise is really objective. That means you can be better or worse prepared, authoritative in praise. Why do we hire opera critics to go to the opera and then write a column, or symphony critics to go and listen to a performance and give an evaluation? Why do we do that? Everybody should go and have his own experience and report on how he felt. Because these people have good ears, have vast experience, they trained and thought about how music works, and they can give you a report on the performance that you aren't going to get on your own. And hearing their report, you may get a great deal more out of the music than you otherwise would get. Now, having said all that, let me show you a verse. This was pointed out to me by Donnie Deutsch of Chicago a million years ago, when we were both young. Look on page 65. In the middle of the page, you have the 100th Psalm. And in the middle of that Psalm, second word for the beginning of the line, the word is enter. Now, I'll read it to you, but I have to change the translation a little bit. This inexplicable blick in the translation. They're not the only ones who do it. I don't know why they do it. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courtyard, not courts. We're not going into a place where there are judges and people are on trial for their lives and so forth and so on. It's a courtyard, like you have in front of a house. Chatzer. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courtyards with praise. Said Donnie Deutsch, the gate is the entrance way to the courtyard. You walk through the gate to get into the courtyard. Therefore, the gate is superficial, it's only an entrance way, and the courtyard is the destination. So what's associated with the gate is more superficial, less significant than what's associated with the courtyard. What's associated with the gate is thanksgiving. What's associated with the courtyard is praise. What's the difference between them? Well, thanksgiving always starts with a focus on myself. Thanksgiving starts with, I got something good. I received a benefit in some way. Then there's a turn outward. Okay, I'm better off than I was before. I received a benefit. Where did it come from? Did it drop from the sky? Did it grow from the ground? Did somebody send it? Oh, Peter sent it. Now I've turned to Peter and I express my gratitude. Thanksgiving has in it essentially a movement from an inner focus to an outer focus. That's preparation for praise. Because praise is an outer focus, not an inner focus. Praise is an attempt to express the objective greatness of the thing you're describing. That's what he said. I don't think he was trained in philosophy, but his words are gold. So, the praise is an objective evaluation of the item that you're praising. Now, come back here to page 99. We're talking about praising God. My, isn't that audacious? Isn't that audacious? Shall we concoct praise of God? The answer is we don't. Almost everything here is quotations from the Tanakh. It isn't our words. It isn't our creativity. The Tanakh is a text that God gave to us, either by dictating every word, as in the 5 books of Moses, or elsewhere inspiring. Either way, the words are going to be appropriate to God, and we borrow the praise from there. Some of you are familiar with the quotation that we have several times in the prayer. Holy, holy, holy is Hashem of hosts, the whole earth is full of his glory. Where do we take that from? If you read it in the Siddur, it says so explicitly every time. We take it from the angels. Isaiah saw a vision of God on his throne, and the angels were reciting that praise. We say it, and every time we say, as the angels say. Because we are acknowledging, we couldn't say that. We wouldn't have the ability to arrive at that formulation of praise of God. But the angels said it, we can copy it from them. We know it's accurate because they said so. We're taking it on their authority. So the whole idea of praise is saying something that's objective about God. And to do that, we rely on God's own supply of such praises. What the rabbis did was to, out of almost 1,000 pages of text, extract 450 words and put them together in a certain order, certain combination of ideas. But the elements of the praise are something which have to be delivered from a source above us. Are we together so far? Okay, that definitely reflects my interest. Now, the next word, atah, you. One of the Hasidic rabbis said that this is the hardest word in the entire prayer to say, because you expresses that God is present in front of you. You refers to someone who's present. He refers to someone who's absent. Can refer to someone who's absent. But you cannot do that. You can only refer to someone who's present. And when you say the word you, if you're present in the prayer, reciting it like a machine, then you're supposed to feel God's presence opposite you in some sense. This is a word of feeling. Then comes the 4-letter proper name of God. If you look carefully in the Hebrew side of the text, you'll see there are no vowels. That's because either nobody knows the correct vowels, or maybe there are some mystics who have hidden it away and they don't publicize it. The texts that have vowels, the Art Scroll does this consistently. In all of its books, they do not put in vowels. The books that have vowels, and which then, if you take the yud and mispronounce it as a J, and you get the word Jehovah, that's a total mistake. Because the vowels there are taken from a different divine name. They're taken from the name Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud. They're just borrowed because that's how it's pronounced. It's pronounced the way Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud is pronounced. And the old texts put those vowels in to remind you of that. But taking those vowels and putting it together with the Yud and Hey, the Vav and the Hey, and making the Yud into a J is just beyond belief. It just has no connection with reality whatsoever. Now, what is this name? So, could be infinity said about this is the most proper name of God. But on a simple level, according to Ramban now and others, there's a root to the name. The root is Hoveh. Hoveh means to be, to exist. One thing the name connotes is that God is the source of all existence. God is the source of all existence. Maybe I should say all existence except his own. Source meaning causes, gives rise to. That's what it means to be creator. Creator means everything other than God traces its existence back to God. And this isn't just historical. Our view is that God continuously makes the creation. That means God is pouring divine energy into the world, and as he continues to pour it into the world, it exists. Were he to stop that process for an instant, the whole world would cease to exist. So says Maimonides. If you have prejudices inherited from academia, of which there are many, that this would be a mystical idea and only belong to those in the mystical tradition, Maimonides writes this in the Mishnah Torah, his legal work for the rabbis, and of course in the Guide of the Perplexed as well, This is a universal Jewish commitment that the world exists only through a continuous influx of divine energy. That's the one connotation of the name. Some philosophers have tried to express this idea. It may be a little exaggerated, but I think it's a good starting point. I'll tell you where the exaggeration lies. You have dreams. Now imagine that in your dream, you also are present, which often happens. And in your dream, some dream character says to you, I want you to promise me to do X. And in the dream, you say, I promise you to do X. Now you wake up. Are you bound by the promise?
What kind of logic would that be? What if X is something that you can't do in the real world?
Oh, you can. I'll have a buttermilk for tomorrow's breakfast.
Maybe you didn't make it consciously because you're not always in full control of your dreams.
Or you could say that your dreams are the world of God, and therefore it's...
Okay, leaving that out.
Oh.
Leaving that out. Good. That's a fair move, but leaving that out. I'm looking for a direct philosophical point now, not a theological point now. The natural feeling, and I think it's 100% correct, is that, of course not. There's no obligation there. A promise is binding only when it's made to another person. You stand in front of a mirror and say, I promise I will have buttermilk for tomorrow's breakfast. You're not bound by that. A promise is made to another person. That's why if you make a promise and you want to violate it, you have to go and get released from the promise. Because it's a commitment to another person. Saying I promise when there's no person there. Now, what's going on in your dream isn't another person. It's just a figment floating around in your imagination. And therefore, it's not really a promise. Because the figment in your imagination, it's real because it's a real figment, but it's not real the way you're real. Its reality doesn't compare to your reality. Its reality is given just by an activity of yours or an activity of your brains. In the same sense, we aren't real the way God is real. God is real, and we are spin-offs of God's activity. We don't have the same kind of reality that He does. We don't have the same kind of existence that He does. So the name here of God, based on the root to exist, has a double impact. Number one, He's the source of all other existence. But having said that, it still could conceivably be that we have the same sort of existence He does. It's just He was original, and then He gives what He has to others. And He can't give what He has to others. Because what He has is autonomous. It's self-contained. And what He gives to others is just His activity. And He isn't the result of anyone's activity. So automatically our mode of existence is different. So not only is He the source of all existence, but His existence is the only real existence. Meaning independent, autonomous, self-contained, self-defined. And the rest is a kind of much lower grade existence. Now I said this analogy isn't exact because between God and man there can be promises. We are the sort of divine figment that has some independence. He gives us some real independence in terms of action and understanding. So the analogy is not exact, but it does indicate the idea that the type of existence that we have, the type of existence that He has, are utterly different. Those are two things that are contained in the background of this divine name. Are we together? Okay, now this name is very central, very fundamental. There are other names of God, and those other names connote different qualities of interaction that God has with the world, and how the names play off with one another is a gigantic subject in the Kabbalah. But at any rate, that is enough for now anyway on that name. I say there's one more phrase I'll do, and then we'll stop here. Our God and the God of our fathers. Our God and the God of our fathers. The obvious question is, say again? I can't hear you.
No.
You might have been right.
No.
What's the obvious question? Our God and God of our fathers?
Seems redundant.
Oh, I don't know if you've done it, huh?
Is he more of a God to them than to us?
Something, try on the surface. I love the surface simplicity itself. 11-year-old, just, don't think deep. Don't think philosophy or anything. Just think on the surface.
Are you thinking? Because I don't necessarily see the question. I just see the like, wow, we share the same God. of
Yeah,
our
yeah.
forefathers.
But what about the order? Wasn't he God of our fathers before Isaac? Why not put them first? Why not do it in chronological order? Now,
Make it more impactful for yourself.
okay, before you guess at an answer, glance at page 79. This is the song at the sea, just above the bottom, at the very beginning of the line. This is my God. Did I say it above? Just above the middle, should have said.
79?
Yeah, page 79. Just above the middle. This is my God, and I will build him a sanctuary, the God of my father, and I will exalt him. Ho! It's an explicit verse. No problem. That's the way the Torah did it. So the rabbis imitated the way the Torah did it. Satisfied now? Shouldn't be. You should now ask, why did the Torah do it that way? If there's some intuitive problem with it, the fact that it's taken from the Torah just pushes the question back one layer earlier. Why did the Torah do it that way? Now, there's a lot that could be written about this. It's not too deep a question. But my approach to it is this. I want you to envision the following scenario. We're living in the 1400s. Europe is feudal. The rule of feudalism is that there are free farmers that aren't serfs to any feudal lord, but you can contract to become a serf of a feudal lord. Of course, if you do that, then your children will be serfs also until 1789 when they had the French Revolution. Now, imagine someone who and the feudal lords were various. Some of them were brutal and vicious. Some of them were very fair. The function of the lord was to run an army and to protect you from robbers. And an isolated farmer found it very difficult to protect himself from robbers. So they made it a deal. You become a serf, you hand over a third of your crop, and you're protected from robbers, and you have a market. So George comes to the local feudal lord. He says, you know what? I can't make it on my own. The robbers are too bad. Let's make a deal. Let's have a feudal contract. The lord says, here are my conditions. And George says, fine, I'm signing up. And he signs up. And it's good. It's good. Just what he thought. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. George has a son, Peter. Peter grows up. 19, 20, 21. He's by law a serf, by birth. 21, he asks for a meeting with the feudal lord. The same feudal lord is there. And he comes in and he says, listen, I want you to know something. The law is that I'm a serf because I was born a serf. But I want you to know, I appreciate the way you run your enterprise. And that if I were free, the way my father was free, I would have come in and become your serf just like my father did. Because I appreciate what you're doing. If we say, God of our fathers and our God, that could sound like, well, he's God of my fathers and I'm just born into it. I'm born into it. It's just a continuation of the past. No, it shouldn't be like that. You should affirm your own willingness, your own volunteerism to be in that relationship with God. Sure, it predated you by thousands of years. Sure, it's a continuation, but that's not why you're there. You're there because you believe in it. Now, you have to say that's the God of your fathers because the materials in your relationship are the materials that were laid out, mapped out by the fathers. You are definitely a continuation the way you express it. But you want to say first that he's our God because that expresses your own independent judgment, evaluation, commitment to be a servant of God. You don't want it to be just a continuation of the ancestors. Okay? So here we have a half hour on less than one line. That's the way it goes.